Yeah, it is really important to just pay attention to the questions.
An important thing with the disclosure, though, is the insurer can only expect you to respond with what you reasonably know. So I've had a few clients recently who are adopted. Because of that, they don't know their family history. It is not reasonable for someone who's adopted to be able to provide details of family that they don't know. So it's, what you can reasonably remember. If you're 5 years old, scraped your knee, it was niggling for a little while, you're not going to remember that. If you broke your arm 2 years ago, probably more likely to remember that.
Hey there, welcome to another Deep Dive episode. And today I've got Ash Campbell, one of our advisors. Thanks for joining me, Ash.
Hey Phil, good to be here.
So today what we're going to talk about, pre-existing conditions and how it impacts an insurance application. So things like exclusions, loadings, and then we'll talk about, is it even worth having these policies if we've got these?
Yeah.
So let's start us off. So let's talk about what are we talking about when we talk about pre-existing conditions?
Yeah, so for a lot of people, a common trigger to reach out to us or to go and get insurance is if you have experienced a health event. Those health events can be considered pre-existing conditions. It's something that you have experienced in the past, maybe is something that is still ongoing, a health event that, you've seen a doctor for really. Doesn't necessarily need to be something that you have received a formal diagnosis of. I know for a lot of people with regards to mental health, most mental health practitioners aren't formally telling you of any sort of diagnosis, but if you've seen a psychologist or GP and spoken to them about mental health symptoms, this is often a pre-existing condition.
Yeah. And it's also like pre-existing is, before the application. So anything health related. So it doesn't need to be a formal diagnosis. Like I can, go and, have a problem with my knee because I've been playing tennis weekly with Seb and winning most of the time. Thanks for asking.
Of course.
And, if I have niggles or issues there, that's a pre-existing issue, even if I haven't gone to a, physio yet or haven't gone to a doctor. Now, let's talk about its impact on insurance. So, the insurance we set up is, fully underwritten. So let's talk about underwriting. What is underwriting?
Yeah, so what happens is if you are looking to go and get cover, you're going to fill out an application. Through that application process, you're going to either have a conversation with the insurer or fill out a form where they're going to ask you so many questions. They're going to be asking you about your age, occupation, smoking, drinking habits, hobbies that you may have that could be hazardous. They're going to be asking about your height, your weight, your family health history, your personal health history, all sorts of things, even travel as well, if you're going to a risky country. The reason they ask all of these questions is just to assess what the risk of them having to pay a claim is for you. So from the insurer's perspective, all these different conditions, some can be more risky, some not so risky. They want to make sure that because they're pooling together so many people's funds, it's not unfair that someone's coming in and they have a higher likelihood of claiming compared to someone else.
Yeah.
They have some mechanisms to help even out that playing field. As you were saying before, that's the use of exclusions and loadings. So the underwriting is the process of them working out what the risk of you claiming is, basically.
Yeah, cool. And I guess there's a few things like, if you answer yes to a question on an application, not all yeses are the same. So,
No.
Insurance companies will ask further questions about the symptoms. So, for me, if I tick yes, I've had, niggles with my knee, they might ask like, how recent is it, and given I work at a desk job, and how serious is it? Like, it's not serious at all. Any insurers listening, if I need to apply for cover, it's not serious at all. No. It's, saying yes to that and explaining that I work at a desk and it has no impact on my ability to work will be treated different to, saying yes to, getting a mental health care plan or something like that. That'll be seen as a little bit more. The other thing I wanted to stress is also the understanding and listening to the questions really, really accurately. So, with things like mental health, they talk about, do you have any symptoms or treatment of? It's not just treatment, it's not going to a doctor, but any symptoms. Especially like the family history one. We've got some clients at the moment that we're working with them to claim on the insurance, but the insurance company's questioning if there has been a non-disclosure, and it's around the family history and the age of which your parents are. So that the insurance company will ask, have a family history of anyone under the age 60 experienced A, B, or C? And if they were 62 when they were diagnosed, you can tick no to that. But if they were younger, you need to disclose that. So, yeah, it is really important to just pay attention to the questions.
An important thing with the disclosure, though, is the insurer can only expect you to respond with what you reasonably know. So I've had a few clients recently who are adopted. Because of that, they don't know their family history. It is not reasonable for someone who's adopted to be able to provide details of family that they don't know. So it's, what you can reasonably remember. If you're 5 years old, scraped your knee, it was niggling for a little while, you're not going to remember that. If you broke your arm 2 years ago, probably more likely to remember that. And so,
That's right. Yeah. So talk to me about what are the different types of outcomes? So we've filled in this questionnaire, we've disclosed A, B, and C. What are the different options for the insurance company? If I tick yes to a minor niggle, will I not be able to get cover?
Yeah, so there's varying degrees of assessments, The first option is standard rates. So if they assess, very low risk that they're of a claim, very low risk that it's going to affect your ability to work or claim on trauma cover, then it's likely to be standard rates.
Standard rates is insurance jargon. Tell me, what does it mean?
Yeah, it means there's no exclusions, no loadings applied, the same as if nothing had been disclosed.
Yeah.
The next option is a loading. So with a loading, it's generally applied if the risk is unknown, but there's an elevated risk. With a loading, they're making the premiums more expensive. So for example, if you had a 50% loading, the premiums for the cover that it's applied to are 50% more expensive. The loadings often can range between 50 and 250%, depending on the type of cover and the insurer as well.
And what are some examples of the things that will be disclosed that will add a loading onto a policy?
The easiest one that I can think of is BMI. If you have an elevated BMI, there's normally a structured increase in the loadings that are applied there as well, ranging anywhere from 50 to 250, depending on the BMI.
Yeah.
Before the worst case scenario of it resulting in a decline. Other sorts of things can be family history. So, for example, breast cancer, depending on the insurer, that can result in a loading being applied. And then, even though this isn't a pre-existing condition, but hobbies as well, they can result in loadings being applied.
Yeah, and it's something like smoking. Like if you're a smoker, the risk of a claim of multiple, different claims because your health is compromised because you're smoking, that isn't, we can't put a circle around that and say, okay, we're going to exclude lung cancer. Because there are many other health considerations when it comes to being a smoker.
Yeah.
So they put a loading on the policy and charge a higher premium for that.
Exactly. Loadings are used where you can't specify the body type or area that could be affected. It's a lot more broad. It could affect a lot of different areas.
Yeah. So and then the last outcome is
exclusions. So with an exclusion, it's a lot more specific and a higher likelihood of you claiming on that particular area. So, for example, if your knee issue was a bit more than a niggle, you had seen a physio, this could result in an exclusion.
Yeah.
So that would then mean if you had an exclusion on your total and permanent disability cover and you were never able to work again as a result of your knee being exacerbated, then it would then you wouldn't be able to receive the claim.
That's right.
I specify being exacerbated because when it's a body type, like a musculoskeletal exclusion, generally there's some additional wording being provided that if you were, say, for example, in a car accident and anyone's knee would have been injured in that particular scenario, then the cover would likely still to be paid out.
Yeah. So there's some particular wording. It's like if the claim is a result of or made worse because of a pre-existing condition, then it's excluded. But if it's got completely nothing related to it, then they can sometimes give what they call comfort clauses. But that's not all the time. And had a conversation recently with a client about, why can't we have that comfort clause on a mental health? And I guess the reason being is because it's really hard, you can't scan someone's brain to indicate their mental health history. And having someone who has had, a history of depression or anxiety and then has, something that we can all identify as unrelated, that history of mental health condition can, increase the likelihood. And so the reason they don't put those comfort clauses on for like mental health is because it's just so hard so it's easy for the insurance company to point it back to, well, there's a history of it, and so therefore we're not paying out, and so therefore they don't put that comfort clause on some of those things. But I did say the last outcome, there's actually one more potential outcome when doing underwriting. What is the last one?
A decline. So a decline occurs when the risk is just too high for the insurers. The likelihood of you claiming outweighs the ability for you to, pay premiums on it.
Yeah. And I mean, some, like the insurance companies have really funny rules in Australia whereby some insurers will say if you've got 3 exclusions, then you get a decline. Like I could have an exclusion on my thumb, my left wrist and my shoulder and not be able to get cover. We can all agree that's kind of a bit silly, but they are the rules, and they're the rules that we all live by. Okay, so we've talked about, exclusions, loadings, standard rates, so no option or to decline. Now, those, can you choose between like getting a loading or an exclusion? Like if an insurance company is wanting to put an exclusion on a certain condition, can I just say, hey, I'm happy to pay 100% more? Is that possible?
There are occasionally some instances where the insurer offers the either or approach. I think I've seen it for family history of breast cancer. I've seen it for a couple other things, but I can't remember them right now.
It's like very limited. I think the only thing I can remember is breast cancer family history.
Yeah, it's very rare. And so often if the insurer is offering one, that's it. And it's not that one insurer being unfair. Generally, it's the same across all of them, for the reason being that if they're applying an exclusion, it's because they think there is a high likelihood that for that particular reason, you're going to have to make a claim. So, for example, if you had degenerative eye condition, it's highly likely that a blindness exclusion is going to be applied as opposed to requesting that you're paying higher premiums. Because with that degenerative eye condition, it is known that in the future you will become blind.
Yeah. And what are some of the most common exclusions that we see or pre-existing conditions that we see at Skye?
Definitely back exclusion. Most people, we're working in an office, we've been doing it for a long time, we just sit down all day. So we've got some sort of lower back, upper back, shoulder stiffness going on. A lot of people have back exclusions. Mental health is another really, really common one, particularly because most of our clients, sit around the age 34 bracket. We're all seeing psychologists these days. It's not as stigmatised as maybe it previously was. So mental health exclusions are very common. And then things for family history of cancer, if you have other sorts of exclusions, just any sort of knee pain, shoulder pain, these sorts of things.
And again, the thing that we are very conservative as a business. We want to make sure the insurance company knows everything, because we can always add information and argue a point to the insurance company. So it's super important that our clients disclose everything. But it is really important to understand the questions well and to answer correctly. So, it is a contract you're entering into with the insurance company. It's a contract that could be worth millions of dollars to you at claim time, and it's worth millions of dollars to the insurance company at claim time. So it's really important that at claim time, they will ask additional questions of, hey, can we provide information about this? We've got a client going through a claim and they've had a family history of this thing that the client's potentially claiming on. And so the insurance company reasonably is asking questions about, is there family history? And if it is, then, okay, when did you know about it and what age and all of these things? Because the insurance company, it is worth millions of dollars to the insurance company. They will want to make sure that contract was entered into according to the contract. Now, we're not all lawyers. Not all of us are going to read, the legal contract we enter into. It's a PDS that's worth 100 pages. but it's really important to answer the questions accurately. But also some things like mental health, where you get asked, are you stress, anxiety, depression, and so everyone has some form of stress in their life. It's a matter of going, is the stress that I'm experiencing at the moment over and above the normal, life stresses? If the answer is yes, then we need to disclose that. But if I'm stressed because, if I use the term stress because I've got to remember to take, my youngest daughter to gymnastics tonight, and that causes stress, or we're busy because we're going away this weekend, all of these things, is that normal stress, or is it more debilitating? So it's really interesting to think about that when we're answering these questions. Is it over and above what is reasonable? So we've got to disclose accurately, but not call everything stress if it's just normal life stresses.
Yeah. Keeping in mind what you have seen a medical practitioner for, what is above what other people may be experiencing. Yeah.
All right. So, if we go ahead with these policies, you're telling me now I'm getting an exclusion. Does it even make sense to take out a policy if I'm getting an exclusion for a pre-existing condition?
Before I answer that question, I'm just going to touch on, if you did take out the cover, is this loading something that you're set for life with?
Great question. Thank you for asking your own questions.
So,
you did tell me before we hit record that I wasn't needed, so let's keep going. Is it set forever?
Is it set for life? Sometimes, yes. Obviously, with everything in insurance, there's some things yes, some things no, plenty of room. With some exclusions, they look at the time that you've been experiencing symptoms for, as well as how long it's been since you have last experienced symptoms. So, for example, if you've been experiencing back pain for a very, very long time and then you go a few years without experiencing it, because it has been chronic, it is likely that that exclusion isn't going to have the same sort of review period compared to someone who's playing tennis. Their knee's got a little bit of a niggle at the moment, they've seen a physio, they've had some treatment, they've been discharged. Often because it's been a shorter treatment period, it's likely that a review period is applied, which means that you have a window where if you don't experience any more symptoms during that window, generally 3 to 5 years, then you can look at having that exclusion removed.
Yeah. And it's important to know that the exclusions and loadings are locked into the policy forever. The insurance company won't tell you that we will remove it in 3 years. We've got to go and redisclose the health information in 3 years' time, reconfirm that there is no, treatment of symptoms. And some insurance companies will ask you to fill out a full health questionnaire. And even if you have an unrelated health event that's not related to the knee, let's say, they still might not remove the exclusion for the knee. So there is, it's not super simple removing an exclusion, but it can be. And to be honest, we've been specialising in insurance for 4 years. We've seen a company, one of the big companies with mental health, they went from only redisclosing your mental health history again to remove that health history, to then move to requesting a full personal statement, like a full medical history again, just to remove your mental health. And then they went back to just having the mental health question. So, underwriting does change. So if someone came back to us at the time where they needed the full medical issue, they may not have gotten that mental health exclusion removed, but then, 12 months later they could. So underwriting is one of these beautiful beasts that moves all the time and changes all the time, and competitive nature comes in, because if an insurance company is not going to remove that mental health because of a sore knee, our clients may decide, well, actually, let's just go to another insurance company because I'd prefer the knee exclusion than the mental health exclusion. So we can move that policy. So there is sometimes this competitiveness in the market where the insurance company who has the policy, they've put all the work in to get that policy on their books. Does it really make sense for them to lose it or not? And so, and they're just swapping the mental health exclusion and the knee exclusion.
Yeah.
There are things like that move all the time when it comes to underwriting. But can I ask you my question now?
Yes.
All right. Now, does it even make sense? If I'm getting a mental health exclusion or a back exclusion or whatever exclusion I'm getting, why do I even go ahead with these policies?
What is the point in getting cover if I'm going to be excluded for the thing that I think I wanted cover for?
Exactly.
Yeah. That is a very valid and a very common question. But the reason I suggest that everyone still goes ahead and gets cover is largely relying on some statistics that TAL provide. They have a fantastic little tool that you can use where you can put in the demographics of your client, the cover that you're applying for, and find out what the most commonly claimed upon medical or outcomes are. What I've done is I've put that in for our average client, so a 34-year-old male and female. For males of that demographic, 72% of claims are as a result of accidents. It's very unlikely you're having an exclusion that ties into accidents. So for young men, absolutely.
Yeah.
Go and get the
insurance,
cover.
you idiot.
Go and get the cover, yeah.
We're all dumb and young. Well, not me. I'm above that age.
You're
range
not
anyway.
young anymore.
Yeah,
No.
now I'm dumb and old.
For women, accidents are still the most common reason for a claim. After that, there's cancer, other, which
groups a
covers
whole
a
bunch
few
of things
things.
together. Yeah.
So cancer's at 17%, others 15%, mental health is 13%, and then bones and joints after that. For men, after accidents, it's 8% bones and joints, and then 4% mental health and 4% cancer. So for these reasons, particularly the fact that accidents, the most common reason for a claim, absolutely still go ahead and get that cover.
And that's right. And look, if you get a back exclusion and you have an accident that, aggravates your back, aggravates the pre-existing condition, then you're not getting paid a claim for that because it's excluded. And that's the purpose of it. So, you may still have an accident that isn't covered under the policy, but it is super important to recognise that rarely do we see cancer exclusions. Sometimes we do from a family history point of view, but it can be relatively rare. I mean, it's probably less than 5% of our clients, I'd say less than 2% of our clients would have an exclusion for that.
Income protection TPD, it's very rarely seen.
And so, and that makes up a huge portion of claims. And that's, the claims that we work on is predominantly that. But there are just so many other things that you can be covered for. And like income protection is, can you not work for whatever reason, health related, illness, sickness, injury, anything? If you can't work, then you'll get paid out for income protection. So, we're all conflicted and we help people set these up all day, every day, but we help them, claim on it as well. And so I almost fell off my chair. I'm okay, Peter. It's fine. We help people claim on these policies. So, it is super important to, even if you do have an exclusion, because as we talked about, we can remove that in the future.
Potentially.
Potentially. Yeah. But again, as we said, underwriting, does change. So do we need to move to another insurance company? There are things like that we can look at as well.
Yeah.
All right. This has been really good. Is there anything that we've missed that you think is super important to kind of touch on?
I don't think we missed anything, but just wanted to reiterate that last point again. Even if you are expecting an exclusion or loading, should still go ahead and take out that cover. It's better to be covered for something rather than nothing. And most of the time, the thing that you are excluded for isn't the thing that you're most likely to claim on.
Yeah. And the last thing I will end on is a bit of a shout out for Skye, but also shout out for any advisor who's doing the process we believe to be really appropriate. Is if you're getting insurance through a financial advisor, which you should, they should be making the recommendation really tailored towards your medical history. And that's something that we do a lot of, is going, all right, we ask a million questions about someone's medical history even before we tell them which insurance company to provide, which is a bit of it's a pain in the neck. Someone's got to answer all these questions, and we spend heaps of time researching, but because we believe in our business exclusions and loadings and trying to pick the insurer who's going to give us the most suitable outcome when it comes to that is really important. So we do all that deep dive. So if you're getting insurance through an advisor, definitely make sure they're asking about your health history and tailoring the advice based on that, because there is differing outcomes, pretty significant differing outcomes. It's a good question. I don't know if you got it off the top of your head, but how many advice meetings would you do where you're recommending an insurer based on health history and the client's pre-existing conditions versus just the cheapest provider?
Definitely more than 50% is because of the pre-existing conditions, because of the health history.
Yeah, because the cheapest provider, you could still be going with the cheapest one, but the provider who we've recommended is providing a better outcome than the alternatives.
Yeah, it's always a nice surprise when the insurer offering the best or the least amount of exclusions and loadings, or the most appropriate exclusions and loadings, ends up being the cheaper option. Because we do so much work in asking the clients for their full health history before we even have that meeting with them, so often we are recommending based off of that health history as opposed to just the cheapest premiums.
Yeah. And, that's my advice for you. I'm going to end on, make sure you're seeing an advisor who's doing that. That's the issue with super funds. They've only got one insurer to go with. Whatever their outcome is what you get. You get what you get, and you don't get upset when you go through your super fund. So it is really important to prioritise the insurance company that's best suited for your medical history versus the cheapest or the easiest option. All right. Thank you again, Ash, for your time.
Thanks for having me, Phil.
All right, so if you did enjoy this deep dive, I recommend you watch a whole bunch of other deep dives that we've done. They'll be on the screen now, and I'll catch you next time.